Hey guys, welcome to another video from the Parrot Bros. Now today we are going to discover whether buying this was a mistake or not. We're going to go through and try, I'll use the word try and find all the faults we can. We're going to do a scan, see what is lurking on the ECU. We're also going to do a little walk around because there's a big puddle underneath the camera where this is leaking from the front and the back. So we're also going to climb underneath and have a little look, and we're going to make a nice list. So before we get stuck into it, let's jump into the intro. Okay, so the kind of things you're going to need for this, ideally you want to do this before you buy the car, and we have a buyer's guide, so up in the corner, I'll link that for you. Definitely watch that before buying one. But this is kind of like a laugh for you and a fault finding for me, and just to show you the kind of things I look for. Now, in the car I've got a laptop with VCDS, I've also got a torch, and I've also got an A4 book with 200 pages and a pencil and a sharpener. I don't think it's going to be a small list. What I would always recommend, and I didn't do it with this because, to be honest, I didn't care when I bought it, but generally you should definitely do a scan. Now the OBD port is down here. You can either have a code reader, you can use one of them Bluetooth ones, or you can use VCDS or similar. I recommend VCDS over most because it's kind of dealer software, so it gives you a lot more. Whereas a code reader, you'll plug it in and sometimes it won't show codes. You plug VCDS in and it will show you things that the code reader probably won't. So also you can measure things like what the temperature sensor is seeing, you can see what the MAF is reading, airflow, all that kind of good stuff. So you can do a bit of Googling, watch a couple of YouTube videos, and it will show you roughly how to use VCDS basically. And also if you're buying a V6, check the chain tolerances with said VCDS tool. So what I'll do is I'll get my laptop fired up and then I'll come back to you and we'll see what horror stories we have on there. Okay, there we go, now it's doing it. So you have to select the car this time. And what it's going to do is work its way through all the different systems. It's going to go through the engine, it's going to go through the ECU, it's going to go through the airbags, the comfort control module, all the stuff inside the car. And hopefully it will give us a nice long list of faults. And what we'll do is then we'll save them, because once we've saved them, then we can delete them and see what comes back, because a lot of it could be historic, where they've had the battery on and off, where they've taken the seats out, where they've done things where the battery's going flat, the alarm may not work, the stereo may not work because it's in like a power save mode, all those kinds of things. And some of these could be really historic. So what we'll do, we'll go through this. When it's finished, I'll come back to you and I'll show you what's on there and what we should be not concerned about and what we should be concerned about. Fingers crossed. Okay, so the scan's complete. Let's have a little trawl through, see what we've got. So it's showing here, so engine, look at the category at the top here in red, engine. We've got a coolant temp sensor issue, signal too high. Now this I actually thought might be an issue because the car is really, really bad at starting. I mean, if it's cold, if you've left it for the day, you come back and you're literally there cranking, and it just doesn't want to fire. You have to do it 3 or 4 times just to get it to catch. Now I unplugged it, little cheeky test there. If you're ever worried about a sensor, if it's things like coolant temp, MAF, N75, anything like that, it can be unplugged and then dried. You can try driving it or running it. And then if it runs and the fault's not there, because it'll always go to like a base setting, then you know you have an issue. It's not something you should do all the time, but for testing purposes, it's great. I mean, I unplugged the coolant temp sensor, jumped in, bang, straight, first flick of the key, straight up. So you know that's probably the issue. It's logging a lambda fault, internal resistance too high, intermittent. So that could be on its way out. Does it say which one it is? Bank 1, sensor 2. So that is, if you think, because this doesn't have 2 banks, it'll always be bank 1, because 2 banks would be if it had 2 sets of exhaust going away. So it's got 1, so it'd be bank 1, which is the exhaust system. Sensor 1 would be the one nearest the turbo. Sensor 2 will be the one underneath, which is the easier one to get to, thank goodness. And third one here, what is this one? Power supply terminal 30. So we'll have to do a bit of a Googling with that one. And what I recommend doing with them is any of these P numbers, you can literally copy that P number, jump onto Google, type in Rosstech, Rosstech, followed by that P number, and what that will do is give you a list of what it could be, things to check, things it might be, and all of that good stuff. So it gives you, if you're not sure, it gives you a really good starting point of things that it might be. Sometimes it just lists every sensor, but a lot of the times it will say like, maybe the coolant temp sensor, unplug, test, check resistance, plug in VCDS, measure whilst running, all that kind of stuff. So it'll give you a bit of a way to go through it. Let's move on to the next one. ABS is probably hydraulic pump defective intermittent and hydraulic pump electrical fault circuit. So what we'll do is that one, it may be a problem, I don't know, but we'll clear it afterwards and then we'll have a look after, see if it comes back after a bit of driving, because we've got no brake lights sensor, no brake lights up on the dash, no warning lights when it's running, so it could just be something historic. Does it log a date and time? No, so it could be ages and ages ago. HVAC system, positioning motor for temperature, flat, blocked or no voltage. So that we'll have a look at, because that obviously could be important. Again, like I said, we're gonna log all of these, we'll save them and then we'll clear them and see what comes back, because they could be historic. But if that's an issue, we will get that sorted, because otherwise we may not get any warm air in the car, or it may not get cold, or vice versa. What else we've got? Airbags, no faults found, which is nice. Instruments, no faults found. All-wheel drive, no faults found. Centre locks. Yeah, so it just says here, alarm triggered, alarm, horn, no communication, horn, like high supply voltage, whatever. So that's not an issue, because it works. No faults, no faults, no faults. You know what? That's not actually that bad. I'm quite happy about that. I was getting worried that we were going to find some horrors. So let's stick that in the old save. I'll just put elderberry, so I know what it is. And then we'll save this to my desktop, just because it makes my life easier. And there we go, save. So that's saved on the old desktop. So we've got the log. Wait for it to finish saving. It will give you a print as if like on a notepad. So it will give you a list, and you can print it out. You could have it. You can show right on it what you think the faults might be, all that kind of stuff. So it's quite handy. And now what we're going to do is we'll clear. So we'll have a big clear up, ready to go. Now, the only thing I would recommend doing is if the battery isn't very good, ideally you might want to charge the battery up before doing this, because you don't want the battery to die whilst you're doing any kind of testing. And sometimes it can take a little while, especially if there's been some faults on there. So I'd drop that little one in there. This battery I've had on charge, that's not too bad. And what we'll do is we'll start another scan, and we'll see what beauties it comes up with that come back. Now, nothing might not come back because we haven't got the car started. What I'll do in a minute is, if nothing comes back, I'll start it and then see what else. So it's logging faults straight away. Right, so we're off to a flying start. We've already got a couple of things logged which we can put on the old pen and paper, ready for looking at issues. Now, that's really, really handy to do, because it can tell you things that you might not be able to see, that you might not know will be an issue, or it could be an issue in the future and cause you to break down at some point, which you don't want, of course. So definitely worth doing a scan, whether you have a little code reader or you get the VCDS. It's a little bit more expensive, but if you're planning to have a VAG car, Audi, Volkswagen, Seat, etc., for a while, then it's definitely worth the investment, because you can do everything on it. Now, I did measure the coolant temperature sensor, and at the moment it's working, but I'm going to order a new genuine one anyway, because that one's not genuine. You can tell that because it hasn't got the VAG logo stamped around it, so it hasn't got the Audi rings stamped around the outside, and that is usually a big giveaway. A lot of the times, non-genuine sensors tend to work then when they can either get hot or really cold, or if they get left for a while, they read the resistance differently, and sometimes they can fluctuate. I mean, I've seen people having issues where their clock saying they're doing is 120 degrees when it's not, and all that kind of great stuff. So for the extra money, it's probably worth buying genuine. Also, I mean, if you can't afford it, you could get a breaker to give you a genuine second-hand one that's been tested. All good breakers will test everything before sending it out. So I'd rather use a second-hand genuine than a new eBay special. So definitely on the list. Now let's get a torch, which I did have. I've lost. Dead handy. Always handy to have. Now, going through, what I'm going to first write on my list is the old coolant leak, because that we need to establish where that is. Let me take you closer to the engine so you can have a look with me. Okay, so there she is now. I'm going to write on there coolant bottle. Now, this isn't massively important, but because the coolant bottle itself is just dirty, but the cap is definitely no good because it's not holding pressure, which is a problem because it's going to chuck it out everywhere. So that's definitely not on there. The other things I'm going to need to address is the battery box, because that one is, if you watch the video of me buying this, is absolute mess. I'll show you in a minute, but that's all burnt out there. It's actually been rewired, so that just needs to be rehoused back into the new box. I'll probably renew some of this cabling because it's all green, which means it's going to be poor for conductive, and it could be damaged further down. So it's definitely worth doing. Now these, again, you can buy new or you can buy from a breaker. Worth doing because electrical fire is so dangerous. I mean, this is less than a foot from petrol, so I can't stress the importance of that enough. So I'm going to write on there my battery fuse box. I need a coolant bottle, and we need to try and suss this leak because it's annoying. There's a big puddle in my garage. Now I have a feeling it's going to be these pipes down here. This torch is wicked, by the way. It's from Costco. But it's, yeah, it looks wet. It's definitely all right. We'll put rocker gasket on there as well because it is a little bit sweaty down the side, to say the least. What I would recommend doing is, if you can't find the specific leak, is to get some brake cleaner or some degreaser. Get a tray underneath your car or a tarpaulin or something to obviously stop all the dirt running into the sewer, into the drainage system, and then give it a good spray down, because a lot of the time the rocker gasket could have been changed. They've just been lazy and not cleaned it. You may not be able to identify the leak because if you can imagine, when you're driving along 70 miles an hour, air is coming through the grille and blowing everything everywhere. So you could have a fuel leak, but it looks like oil because it's going onto the block, and then all the dirt's going onto it and it just looks sweaty. That's a good little tip, because it is sometimes really hard to find things. Obviously coolant could be leaking down from really high, but you don't see it dripping because it doesn't hit anything until it gets halfway down, and halfway down is some coolant pipes, so you think, oh, the coolant pipes are at fault, when really they're not. There's definitely pink residue on top of the gearbox here, so that is a good indicator. Now the issue I have is there's a few things that have coolant in them here. So you have a plastic 4-way which has the coolant temperature sensor in. You've got a T-piece which is 4-way. You've got God knows how many pipes. You've got obviously your after run pump comes across into that T. You've got top rad pipe. You've got the one that goes into the block with a coolant temperature sensor. You've got the ones that go into the heater matrix. So there is an abundance. What I'm probably going to have to do is have it running and try and look for leaks. But what I'll do is I'll clean it all down. I'll put on my list coolant leak ? I'll have a better look. I'll take some pipes off, take the airbox off and stuff, and have a better look at some of the pipes, see if they're any obvious damage. They don't look too bad. However, this looks like it's had the plastic coolant temperature sensor housing replaced, and it looks like that might be where it's leaking from, which would make sense. So we'll do that. The PCV system, like I said before in the other video, it doesn't have one, so it's a bit of a mess. It's got this pipe just going off the crankcase and down. I mean, down there it's definitely had a coolant leak for a while, because everything is a coolant-y colour. So it's definitely had something explode, a pipe pop or something, because everything's got an orangey tint to it. But yeah, the PCV system needs sorting because that pipe doesn't do anything. The pipes down here are all lashed together. I mean, that's just taped on and into the tip. It's not right. Whether I delete it and put a catch can in or whether I reinstate it, I don't know. I'll probably put a catch can in just because I haven't before and I quite fancy the idea of doing it. Show you all how to do it. Also, I'm going to order one of those Cloud9 ones that go into the billet breather pipe, just that goes into the engine block, because the plastic ones are crap. Now this is ridiculously sweaty underneath here, so there's definitely an oil leak of some description because it's like tar. It is absolutely vile. But besides that, it doesn't look too bad under here. I say too bad, it is quite bad. It needs a good clean. I'm definitely going to have to clean it because all that orange is going to be a red herring when I'm trying to find the coolant leak. I'm also at some point going to do a compression test just because it's spitting out its coolant. I don't think it's that. I think it's where it's had coolant leaks. It's not building up pressure. The cap isn't allowing it to build pressure. So therefore it just overheats and pops up. Not overheats, but chucks it out when it gets any kind of pressure. All the piping doesn't look too bad. The fuel lines are a little bit cracked with pipework. So with rubber hosing, you'll get like stress cracks where basically if you look, this one's quite a good common one for it. So this is the inlet manifold. Next to the inlet manifold, there's a pipe that goes round and off. And now you can actually sort of push it down or squeeze it and you can see the cracks appearing. Now that, I would say, is the time to replace it. Same with fuel lines. Mine, again, has got a few little cracks on the top. Now, it's all well and good, but the little tiniest leak on these can make them run funny, make them bad idle and all sorts of things. And obviously fuel lines, if there's a little crack, it will let fuel out, and fuel in an engine bay can cause fire. So I don't think I have to tell you any more about that. But apart from that, it doesn't look too bad. There's a couple. We'll definitely rewire some of the coil pack harnesses because one of the plugs is broken and it's cable tied on. I just noticed that. And we're going to do a little N249 delete probably as well if we're doing the catch can, because in the future I would like to put a large turbo onto this. I'm still up for debate as to which one, because I haven't quite decided yet. We'll do a couple of videos maybe where we'll meet some people with different turbos and see what the advantages and disadvantages are, because that is always good fun before spending a few £1000s. But yeah, do you know what? This isn't actually too bad. We'll have to address the issues we found from the scan. One of them is ABS. So it may have a power problem. It may be the ABS pump is no good. We shall see. We'll do some testing, but we'll do a separate video for that. But yeah, no, the car isn't actually too bad, I must admit. But although we haven't got it on a ramp and we haven't done an MOT yet. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to address the ABS thing. It could just be a broken cable, a fuse out. I haven't checked yet. But we'll have to get that one addressed before the MOT because that's a failure. And then besides that, I'll do a walk around, check all the lights. I'm going to do a little cheeky service because I don't know the last time this was serviced. So little oil and filter, change all the filters. And then on the way to the MOT station, I will take it down the bypass, which is obviously the quickest way, just to clear that cat out because it's been sat for a while, so it might be a little bit on the rich side. And then, yeah, we'll see how it goes, because once it's on the road, I can then take it places, use it, and then see what other problems we have. But the coolant bottle is definitely getting fixed first, and the brake sensor. But so, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like to see, I'll certainly try, because this one is definitely going to need to come apart once or twice to do some of these bits. But to be honest, it's not actually that bad a car. It's done 178 or 179,000 miles. It's not actually that bad. It's definitely better than the other one was. But it's all similar faults. I mean, it's again, the PCV on my one was leaking. The injector seals were leaking. There was a little coolant leak, hence the reason I replaced all the coolant hoses for silicone and all that kind of great stuff. So, yeah, I think we shall certainly see some repairs coming from this one in the very near future. So keep an eye out for that. Until the next one, guys, bye for now.